right, welcome into the 5 o'clock Sweats podcast. This is episode 2. Tonight's topic of discussion is going to be how has gaming or how have video games changed in the last 10 plus years or so, I guess, since kind of we were kids growing up. I'm Chris, co-host Ryan and Derek as well. We are the three main hosts of the show here. So let's kick it off. Ryan, what do you think? What would be your number one change that you've seen, whether it's in the gaming industry or, just video games?
It's not like my number one thing, but something that is just so prevalent today in gaming and specifically first-person shooters is the infatuation with movement in games. Like, I remember back in my day.
Oh man.
No, this topic, I'm going into this topic knowing we're gonna age ourselves. We're gonna feel so old. But I remember in my day, good movement in a game was just strafing and trying to outsmart your opponent. Whether you're not just going from left to right, you're doing like right, and then left, and trying to outmaneuver your opponents, try to just win the one-on-ones.
Yeah.
That's what I miss. And then today you have, I'll just use Apex as an example since I play a lot of Apex, but you got kids wall bouncing, sliding, especially on PC, you can do like what was it called? The mouse strafing or
Tap
whatever
strafing.
it was, where you could basically just strafe in midair, which is insane. But just kids and people are obsessed with movement in gaming today, and if a game doesn't have fun movement, I feel like it's at a disadvantage out the get-go.
Yeah.
And I kind of just miss when back in the day there wasn't, like, movement wasn't such a priority. It's just good gun mechanics and gunplay, and just I miss basic. I miss when movement was basic, because I'm tired of going on Twitter every day and seeing like the latest clip that someone posts, and it's just like I can't even keep track of what's happening. Like, what the hell are they doing? Like, I don't even know how they're like. They're not even playing the game. They're just like in a movement simulator. Like, they're just like they're on crack.
I agree with that, but what I kind of wanted to ask you is, do you think that movement mechanics, whether it be tap strafing, whether it be slide canceling, like whether it be snaking, right, where you kind of just keep peeking the same head glitch, right, anything like that, do you think, although those things are kind of sweaty and a bit annoying to some of us slower gamers, I guess, do you think that they add a little bit to the skill gap, or do they add a lot? Like, what do you think they're adding to the actual quality of the game?
Yeah, no, I can appreciate the modern movement for adding a skill gap. And there was always a skill gap in games. Like, for example, back old school Halo, like I said, strafing, but you had to have good aim. You had to have really good aim, and the guy with the player with the better aim won most of the time. Now a lot of the times aim is still king, but you can you can win, like a lesser player who's maybe not as good at aiming can win because their movement's insane, which I do like. Like, I think that evens the playing field a little bit. And I'm not saying movement's like the movement is terrible. I actually I do appreciate, like, especially in Apex, like some of those clips are awesome. But there's also like gratuitous movement, and I just feel like watching some of these clips, these players are just like they're on crack. They have ADD or something. They're just like swapping their weapons, jumping around for no reason.
Oh yeah, like why?
Sliding on anything. Yeah. And it's like fancy. It doesn't add anything to the gameplay. It just makes it look stylish. Like, you're not getting style points in these games unless there's a game that adds style points and adds that to your total, to your points total at the end of the game. But yeah, I mean, there's nothing I like when I'm watching streamers, especially Apex. I like watching controller players more because I'm a controller player and I know their movement is limited, as opposed to mouse and keyboard. So I like watching guys like Nice Wig or Snipe Down, um, playing, and they rely just on excellent aim, although aided by aim assist, which that's a debate all in itself. We'll save that for
Oof.
another time.
Oh my
um,
gosh.
Yeah, I've got a
but
question. If
yeah,
so, does I don't know how to phrase this, the movement that is available in the game via the mechanics, right? Does that change your play style? Do you incorporate those mechanics, or do you stick mostly to strafing like you say you missed, right?
yeah. So that, I will try to incorporate some mechanics, but as a controller player, I'm honestly limited in the movement mechanics I can incorporate into my gameplay. I mean, it depends on the game. If we're talking Apex, like there's some things that I can't do as a controller player. Um, but nor am I, I consider myself a casual gamer now. I don't really have the time or the desire to really practice those mechanics. I just want to focus on my aim being as precise as possible. That's
Yeah, I
important
mean,
to me.
so I kind of understand both sides of the argument there because, I mean, you can even kind of see it like in Warzone, for example. It's very divisive in the sense that, like, you had Warzone 1 where people like abused slide canceling and a lot of the mechanics. But part of that, though, is there's a mechanic that exists, and then the skill gap is you learning to use that mechanic efficiently. And like one of the big things, and this is not just in Warzone or Call of Duty, it's kind of in any first person shooter, is using movement to break somebody's camera, right? To essentially cheese aim assist, right? So if you can slide in on somebody at the right angle, you can actually like break their aim assist almost, or you can pull their camera to one side while basically, shoot them or something else. So it is an actual like component, I think, of like competitive shooters. I will agree. I think there's a focus on it, and I just think it's one of those things where it's like an evolution in how games are made, and it's just like the new norm. And I think that's why, for example, Warzone 2 is struggling so much. Is their number one gripe, as far as I know, and in my own personal opinion, is the lack of movement. Right? You have slow animations, slow, clunky movement. There is no outplay mechanics, right? There's like, you're talking about like the showmanship, and I think there's a lot of that, right? We're talking about an era of content creation, and like people want clips, right? I might not win a match, I might not have 30 kills, but I have like 2 great clips. And a lot of that starts with movement. And you see Warzone 1 had tons of like 1v3s, 1v4s, and it was all because of movement. Versus like another, again, Warzone 2, you don't see that as much because the movement is so watered down. So I see your point, but I also kind of see the other side where it's like people want more movement mechanics. And I think if you look at like Titanfall and Apex, I think they really pushed movement to the next level. And like it's kind of like the new norm.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's just, that's kind
I,
of where my head goes.
I guess
There's more dimension in Apex and Titanfall, right?
Yeah.
I feel like in the older games, you're really limited to whatever level you're on, really.
Exactly.
But in games like Apex and Titanfall, you've now got the ability to go up or down. Mm-hmm. I feel like adding that extra dimension in absolutely like changes a movement game.
100%. And it adds to the longevity of games too. I mean, you think about, okay, you can get so good at aiming and shooting, but it's like, okay, what is the next area that I can improve, right? Awareness, right? Like, map knowledge, knowing rotations, positioning, all that stuff. But, at the end of the day, it's just like, you look at basketball, right? It's all it's movement now. It's like, you know what I mean? Like you look 30 years ago, the way people dribbled the ball is different than the way people dribble now. It looks nice, but there's a lot of like used to it, I think, like functionality.
Yeah, I appreciate like games like Titanfall and Apex and any other game that actually builds the game with movement in mind. Like that's fine. I can appreciate that. It's the movement is purposeful.
Hmm.
And even Halo Infinite, they added the sliding. I can't speak on whether like the sliding, if you basically slide, if you're jumping off like a ledge and you slide at the perfect time, you like launch yourself forward. I don't know if that was an intentional mechanic or not, but they haven't fixed it, so I don't know. But anyway, games like that where the developers have the movement in mind and they want to build that into the game, that's fine. But there's games that maybe have limited movement, or even games like Apex or Titanfall that have movement built in. People are always trying to break, for lack of a better word, break the game and try to find the next big movement mechanic that wasn't intentional. And I guess just my point to start was just the fetishism of movement. Just the people craving to be the first person to find a new mechanic to break the game and just show off, how cool they can look while killing people
Right.
in game.
So you're mostly concerned with like the abuse of mechanics that may or may not have been intended.
Yeah, yeah.
Right. So like I'll say the Pathfinder grappling hook is something that you're fine with, but
Mhm.
once that's abused, I don't know how that could be abused. I don't play a ton of Apex, but
If there
once
was
that's like abused,
yeah,
that's when you start to have some negative feelings about it.
yeah, and like if someone had exploited a glitch with the path, and I'm sure this has existed before. Um, the Pathfinder grapple, like you grapple in a certain part of the map or something, and you go flying like a mile. Like that's probably already been a thing. But and the I guess the nice thing about games these days is that developers can patch things like that quickly, well, relatively quickly. I guess it depends on the developer we're talking about, but um, yeah, those things can definitely get patched, which is good. But then it just divides the community, I think. Like I don't like it's just annoying to constantly see like toxic debates. Like I'm fine with debates on movement in regards to gaming, but um, it's when it gets toxic. It's just disheartening to see. Like I avoid certain Twitter threads sometimes, or just post on social media because I know what the comment section is going to look like.
Yeah, I
Toxic.
feel like the more that we're talking, the more I'm realizing I might be one of those movement kids. I remember like the early 2000s with like Quake and even Counter-Strike Source, right? There's an unintended side effect of the way that the engine runs, where if you're running forward and you jump and then release the forward key and strafe to one side or the other, your movement or speed will accelerate. So people would start bunny hopping.
Oh no,
That's
bunny
yeah.
hopping.
Quake and CS Source is where like I learned that, and it isn't something that the developers intended, but it was in the game. And I just remember learning how to do that. And I think, back when I was a younger man, I probably had a lot more free time to devote to, learning when to jump and how to strafe and how to do the things that I want to do. But it was always a huge competitive advantage in Counter-Strike Source because I could just get to places quicker than other people.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting too. Like you can look at like most popular shooting games and there is an exploitable movement mechanic. Warzone, right? Slide canceling was not an intended movement. mechanic. It's literally like you're spamming 3 buttons, right? And it actually probably is responsible for breaking like a lot of controllers. But then you also look at like Gears of War, right? That's a third person shooter. But I mean, well, the big thing in the Gears of War was wall bouncing, right? So you're using there's like, when you go to basically slide into cover in Gears, there is like an animation. Essentially, it kind of sucks you into the wall once you tap the button. But you can basically go up to a wall and initiate that animation, but then pull back out of it. And then you can basically do that against all walls. So you're literally skating around the map, essentially, just kind of like locking into that animation and then like jumping out of it. But again, it's like you said, there's like a feeling of like, gratification when you're like, okay, I just spent like, however long, like playing like a private match, learning this one movement. And then it's like you take that move and then you go and implement it into like real games. And you're like, oh shit, like it's paying off. So I see what you're saying, Ryan, but I definitely, I think I'm kind of with Derek in the sense that I like the idea of like movement mechanics and having to learn them. There are some situations where it's like there's just a mechanic for the sake of like there being a mechanic, like why, right? Like I don't really think there's any function in Call of Duty to just whying all the time, just constantly swapping your weapons. But it's just like it's a little like a spazzy thing, and I see what you mean by that, Ryan. There are some things that just like people are just spazzing, like it means nothing. But
yeah, I I'm one of those. I'm actually one of those people.
You're a
I will switch my
YYer?
weapon for no reason, and it's actually gotten me killed in games
All right,
before because I don't have the right weapon out.
how do we mute him? I'm trying to figure that out.
Here it is. Okay.
Got it.
I think that ultimately for me, the movement conversation is really all about freedom.
Yeah.
When I think back to like what was that? Battlefield 2042? Was that the beta that came out that was just terrible?
Bad. Yeah. That's it.
Games like that where, the movement is super limited. It just feels like the player that I'm controlling is way limited. So in a game like Counter-Strike Source, where I had a ton of bunny hopping experience, I could do what I wanted. And I think that feeling of freedom is what I've been chasing.
Yeah. It caters to different play styles. And I think it's like leave it in the hands of the players to evolve it and decide what stays and what goes kind of, and like how they want to play. I fully agree with that.
I guess my fear for gaming, for like just the future of gaming, is like can games like old school Halo or even old school Call of Duty or games like that, if a new game like that comes out, can it survive? Like a big IP like one of those can probably do well because it's a big IP, but I mean a game with just like really solid gun mechanics, aiming feels great, but really what if the only movement mechanic is sprint or like a very limited slide? Like I don't know if games like that will catch on in popularity these days with the current obsession with movement. So I guess that's my main worry, just moving forward. Is every developer producing a competitive first person shooter going to need to implement some sort of movement into their game?
I would say yes.
Right. I'm trying to flip through the mental Rolodex of like, all right, what games have I played? What's the movement like? Oh, it's bad. All right, what's the next game?
Exactly. Once you find that it's bad, you go to the next game.
Yep.
I know.
You know what I mean?
We didn't think about movement back then. Like we were just having fun. It was just a matter of who had the best aim, and this game feels really like the mechanics in this game feel great. The runs smoothly, satisfying to play, and we didn't have all this movement back then. Yet we still had a ton of fun. I guess we just didn't know we had. I guess.
Well, it's also. It's part of the evolution of anything, right? I mean, like, you can take anything that's evolved and over time and be like, oh, wow, how great was the first or second iteration versus like, where are we now? And it's like, oh God, I couldn't go back to that. And I think that's why like a lot of nostalgia is like, oh, we remember these games like as being the best games. And then you go back and you're like, oh, this is so bare bones. It's just like, it's like one of those things like you had to have been there kind of thing. It was right at that time, but maybe not, maybe it's not a right or wrong discussion.
Yeah, and I think something that we talked about last time was, we went from Super Mario, right, side-scrolling platformer, to Titanfall 2, right,
Yeah.
giant mechs, wall riding, like it is just the evolution, I think. But
Yeah.
I think, Chris, you're right. Like, we're not going to know what the right decisions were for all the game developers, right? We're just here.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's kind of the beauty of it is it's like, even these games that we refer to, like we were talking last week, some of the games that are on like the, the Mount Rushmore of games. And it's like, you can go back, like if you, could really go back in time, like we were complaining just as much about those games as we are about the games that are out currently. And it's always going to be like, this game stinks. It was better back then. Right. It's like always going to be that because it's like, nostalgia and you forget, that every game goes through its growing pains because they're always evolving. But I think, the talk of evolution is kind of like a good segue into like another point where, like, I would say one of the big changes in gaming, I agree with movement, but I think a bigger one is sort of like I would say it's almost like the way in which games are developed now and kind of like the lens in which they're viewed through is like the monetization and like this whole concept of games as a live service, right? I think it all kind of ties together, but essentially what I've noticed, and I'm going to say probably in the last, I think really in the last 5 years, but definitely in like within the last decade, I go back growing up, you bought a game for full price or whatever, sale price, whatever it was, you paid X amount of money for the game and that was the game, right? There was no day one patch. There was no seasons. There was no DLC. There's no store. There's no microtransactions. For better or for worse, right? Like if something was totally unbalanced, it stayed that way forever. And, that was kind of fun. But, you look at things now, right? You kind of fast forward to even like, you look at Fortnite. And I think Fortnite pretty much changed the game as a whole. But, every game is, I think, they have a monetization strategy. And when I say that, I mean microtransactions, whether it's a shop, whether it's loot crates, whether it's, like a battle pass or like a tier system, whatever it might be. I think games are built around monetization as opposed to it used to be, how can we monetize this game? This is the way we want to monetize. How can we build the game around that strategy? And you see it a lot. And personally, I think it's to the detriment of gamers and game quality. But you see it a lot. I mean, you look at Call of Duty, right? They have a store. They have a battle pass. They have a new battle pass where you can only pay cash or you can't use COD points and it's like $30, right? And, you even look at 10 years ago, a DLC pack was $10 and it got you like 3 maps and like, some other stuff. Nowadays, like a skin is $25, right? Like, so the price is constantly evolving. Yeah.
Dang.
I mean, you can look at Call of Duty and some of their bundles, $25, and you look at the cost of a game, $70. It's like, is this skin really about 1/3 of the game? Like, I doubt that. So I think the value proposition there is horrendous, but it's a way that I think a lot of gamers, younger gamers, that's all they know. And I think we have a unique perspective in the sense that like we've seen it kind of go through like all iterations where it was just, pay for the game, simple DLC packs, to now like games are, free to play, but monetized so heavily. Again, I think to the detriment of the quality of the game and to gamers, because, this whole live service thing is like, let's just drip feed content. And then, we'll just extend the life of this game by 3 years or whatever. And, I don't know what you guys think, but I also think the term content has become so diluted. Like what constitutes content these days is like, I think pretty abysmal. Like a battle pass to me is not content. skins and emotes are not content. Content is like playable stuff, in my opinion. I think they're just kind of add-ons, but I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, I mean, for an example, Apex does their collection events every season. They've had 4 this season. They've never done 4 before.
Yeah.
And basically, what an Apex collection event is they release amazing looking skins. Like, shout out to the artists because the skins look great for the most part, but it's just a cash grab. That's literally all it is, and you buy all these skins. You collect, I think it's like 20 to 25 skins, and then you get rewarded with an heirloom.
Okay.
Which, Apex heirloom is the most sought after cosmetic in the game, but
Yeah.
they're extremely hard to get. And if you don't pay, I think someone did the math, and I think they usually like. If
Yeah,
you
I'm about to
pay-
ask you for some math here.
Yeah, I don't know the exact number, but if you buy every pack and like do all like they'll offer like discount bundles in the store where you get you can get like 5 items for less than buying them individually. But if you do that and then buy everything else, you're spending at least like $150 at least, and you're buying that's for a
Wow.
cosmetic.
Yeah. To play
And
a
a
game that you've
first-person shooter.
already bought.
Yeah. And that's another good point, right? And I've said this before. I think, Ryan, we've talked about this kind of like off podcast, but like in Fortnite, I can kind of get it a little bit because it's third person, right? You see all the vanity, all the cosmetic items. Like you literally see your character, right? In like these FPS games, I mean, what are you seeing? Your hands?
Yeah,
Yeah, you see
exactly.
your
Like a
hands.
weapon skins, all right, but character skins, it's like, you see it in like the pregame lobby, and then like, if you win, hopefully, you see it in the end screen. But it's like, I don't know, it's kind of crazy, like what we've become willing to pay for versus it's like you second guess, should I buy this game for $70? But meanwhile, you'll spend $20, to look like I don't know, who knows what, but
Goku.
exactly. There you
Oh my
go.
God. Fortnite is the king at that. Like I actually take my hat off to them for for all the big IPs and characters and whatnot they brought into that game
Yeah.
over the years. It's actually crazy.
I
But
mean, it's definitely it's 100% a business, and I get that. And they're always coming up with strategies, just like players are looking to evolve how they play. Developers and publishers are looking to develop how they make money. I totally understand that. But what I want to hear from you guys, and Derek, I think you can start, is what do you think about like the way that monetization is in terms of, is it healthy? Is it good for game quality? Is it good for players? What do you think?
I don't know. I'm trying to figure out where to attack this from. So the games that I play the most on my computer are Counter-Strike and Rocket League. They kind of have 2 different approaches there. I think with Rocket League, it is more of like a battle pass system.
Okay.
Where I am absolutely guilty of getting the battle pass every season, even though I play maybe once a week. And there's no reason for me to, right? I'm getting what? New decals for cars, new goal explosions for my many for sure, 100% definitely goals. Like it, I don't understand why I buy it, and yet I buy it. So I feel like I'm the target audience for that one. CSGO, it's, sometimes you'll get skins randomly as a drop after a match, but more often than not, you're getting locked cases.
Yes.
And then buying keys for those locked cases is another $3 per key. And then you use the key on the case, and it's a completely random luck of the draw what you get out of that case.
So do you think, so looking at those 2 kinds of monetization strategies where one, the cosmetic you're getting, right? Whether it's in a tier in a battle pass, okay, I know when I get to level 8, that's what I'm getting, right? You know what's coming your way, versus this quasi gambling kind of vibe, right? Like, well, obviously there's countries that have outlawed that kind of system because it is, arguably gambling. You're leaving a lot of it up to chance. But so you know what you're going to get versus you're paying money to have a chance at something you want, but not knowing what you're going to get. Which one do you think is? Let me try to. I want to like say this the right way without. Do you think there's one that's worse for players than the other? And then part two, do you think like kids should be allowed to kind of like do this? Like, and when I say kids, I mean, sub 18 years old.
I'll say, as far as in-game experience goes, something like Rocket League, where you know what you're going to get at each level, is probably better for the players. It's probably better for the game and the gameplay. You know that if there's a cool car you get at, level 50 or whatever, that when you get there, you're going to get that car.
Mm-hmm.
I have always felt a little scummy about how CSGO deals with their cases, because it is for sure gambling.
Yeah.
And it really is just all cosmetics. And I understand that I do own skins, and some of them I've paid for via case openings, but it doesn't add anything to the actual gameplay. At least with Rocket League, like, you could get a different car and it would behave differently. But
yes,
with CSGO, everything's uniform, right?
But
your
there's
gun
a
just
little-
looks different. You have different gloves on.
little bit of like a prestige though, right? It's like, oh, this guy's spent a lot of money, or like Ryan with the heirlooms, right? Like like heirlooms, obviously it could be like, okay, this dude just outright bought one, or it could be like, okay, this person, he or she is a true Apex grinder, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? They must have just been grinding to get, the free one or whatever. So I think there's like a little bit of like FOMO, right? Like fear of missing out when like there's all these cosmetics and it's like, this dude has it, but I don't, but I totally play this game hardcore. Like I should have that. Do I buy it, or do I do like the free way of grinding for it? Cause some games allow you to do that. Or like obviously CS has like this crazy, like, basically like a black market of skins. And I mean, people are paying like, nutso money. Yeah.
Thousands.
Like crazy.
Yeah.
And it's like, at what point though, like, we can make decisions on our own, right? We have our own money, right? We work for it, whatever. You could do what you want with your money. But my other question is like, how does that work when, your kids are playing games? And it's like, cause I think kids should game. And I was a kid gaming, but like, listen, if I had my parents' credit card on file, there probably were going to be some times that I would be swiping that thing for some of the stuff that's out now. So, I mean, what do you guys think? I guess, Ryan, why don't you answer that? What you think in terms of like, is that good for kids, or is that really toxic?
Well, it definitely comes off as predatory, especially
Yeah.
when you're talking about the gambling, like the gambling-esque monetization, which in my opinion actually has no value to the player whatsoever. If I'm getting something, I want to know what I'm going to get. It's better for the developer because it is gambling, and players will
Sure.
keep spending money until they get what they want because they know what they want is in there somewhere. It's
It's
just a
that
matter of getting it.
dopamine. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
listen, my first heirloom that I got in Apex just from opening packs, I ran around my apartment, I danced, I screamed. It's crazy. Actually, that's like one of my favorite things is watching reaction videos on Twitter.
Yeah.
Is like people getting their like first heirloom. They're so excited. Like it's cool. And I've also bought some as well. But I think actually in regards to kids, like our parents' generation, they're not aware. But
Sure.
when if your daughter ends up playing games when she's a little older, you're gonna be aware of gaming monetization because you might be playing the same games she's playing.
Sure. Yeah.
So I think our generation, like when we have kids, we're gonna be aware of the current state of monetization in games, and we'll be more tuned in to to what our kids could be buying or purchasing on the game
Or the
whatever game you're
risks,
playing.
like, yeah, like the practices behind it, because,
Yeah.
you made a good point, right? You get up and start running around, and it's like, we're like, not we, but like these game publishers and developers are like literally teaching, like there's psychology that goes into this, right? Like they're literally like teaching these kids like what like instant gratification and like this dopamine rush. It's like when you open a pack of Pokemon cards or baseball, whatever cards, right? And you're waiting for that good hit. And it's like, that's what it is. It's like, you don't even really care what you get. It's just the chase is almost like what you're paying for. It's like that crazy rush, like that what if chance. So
Yeah. I don't mind when games have both. Like Apex has both.
Yeah.
Does Call of Duty have both? Do they have a game like a
Mm,
randomized
no.
system?
So Call of Duty, I want to say at one point they did have like crates you could buy, but like they've definitely switched now towards the store. So you have a couple of routes, right? You can do like most games. There's Battle Pass. If you don't buy it, there's a couple freebies in there, whatever. You can buy the Battle Pass, which is X number of dollars, but you can use COD points. So typically, if you buy the Battle Pass one season, you'll be able to get it with COD points for essentially the next however many seasons. The problem is they just instilled a new thing where it's called the Black Cell Pass, I think, and it's literally like an upgraded Battle Pass, right? So pay $30 cash, and now you get like these fancier skins and like these specially tuned weapons, whatever it may be. But it's all that system, like they get you to spend real money, but then they say, oh, you get it back in COD points. But the problem is COD points aren't real currency. Right. So now you're going back into their store. Like it's like a gift card, right? Like they just want you in the store.
Yeah.
Right. And you're using the COD points again. And then you know what? You're not going to have enough COD points for this one skin. So you're going to, buy more COD points. So it's like that ever evolving kind of like, just keep paying us. Like eventually you'll feel satisfied.
You never do.
No,
you never do.
You don't.
No.
So who
I don't gamble.
owns COD? Who's the giant corporation?
That would be Activision.
Activision.
Which is like, whatever. Like, yeah, I
They
won't
who
say
shall not be
anything,
named.
Yeah.
But
Immediately
Activision's
I
got
think
it,
of
man.
EA, right? And
You
EA
know-
is absolutely guilty of this too, right?
Oh,
I
yeah,
played
EA
the
might be
Formula
the
One game,
Worst
and
offender.
Oh, yeah. Well, EA gets it surprisingly, like, since it's not totally in our wheelhouse, EA definitely gets a lot of it from, if you look at like my reference to opening card packs, like FIFA Ultimate Team, Madden Ultimate Team, whatever Ultimate Team, it's the same thing, right? Like you basically buy in-game cards to use that player with X number rating or whatever. So it's the same concept, but you don't know what you're getting in those packs, just like a real pack of cards. The difference is it's like, it's highly, highly addicting because you could just sit there like swiping, kind of like kind of like a slot machine sort of thing.
Yeah, I mean that's not. I mean, I don't know. There's something with that, like a pack opening, like with cards. I don't know why. That sounds. I'm able to let that pass for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know why, because I'm feeling the nostalgia of like
Yeah.
going to buy like Yu-Gi-Oh cards or Pokemon cards and opening the packs and just like seeing what was in there.
Oh God,
And
great
then be like,
feeling.
Mom, can I buy 5 more, please? Um, oh God, that I don't know why that doesn't bother me as much, like MLB or like Madden doing player card packs, even though it's the
'Cause it-
same exact thing as what we're talking about.
Because it feels more like something you're familiar with versus a lot of
Yeah.
the other strategies are not things that like you can do outside of the game. Like you're opening digital card packs, you can do that in real life, but you can't buy, as far as I know, like, character skins like in real life, so to speak. So,
Well, if you
you
can,
know.
I want to get a new one. Nah, I'm kidding.
need an
I look
outfit
good.
change.
I look good.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I stand though. My big thing, so Ryan's was movement and, developers catering towards movement and games almost kind of forcing movement into a game, whether it's good or bad. It definitely divides the player base. My thought was, I think one of the biggest changes in gaming is the monetization and building games around that. So Derek, kind of want to hear from you. What would you say is like the biggest change? And again, these don't all have to be negative things. I think it's just, these are the things that piss us off, so it kind of stands out. But, what do you think has been a change, good or bad?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna go. Yeah, I think I'm gonna go bad again.
Yeah.
We kind of touched on this already, but shipping games as incomplete,
Boom.
like you're saying, right? Live service compared to what you bought is what you got.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back again to last episode, and the PlayStation 2 was absolutely my favorite console, hands down. And I knew when I got the game, like there was going to be no other things related to that game that I was going to buy, right? Maybe I get a strategy guide or something like that for some of the RPG games.
Oh my God, that is
Yeah.
such a nostalgia
Yep.
point
my
right
God.
there. The strategy guides.
Dude, I
But
miss those.
Oh,
yeah, I must have like a full shelf full of them back home.
I have a
But
Halo 2
great
one
times.
somewhere
Great
in storage.
times.
yeah, I knew when I booted up Dark Cloud 2 that once I got to the end of it, unless there were things that I missed, like that's it. There isn't evolving, patches every time. There wasn't stuff that they needed to fix because they couldn't.
Yeah.
So whatever they shipped is what you got. And I feel like I haven't had a good experience with games recently that, promise that they'll update the gameplay, promise that they'll, improve the movement. But
So do you think, so when you talk about that, right? So like, let's say live service games versus what they used to be. What would you say? Because I think we can kind of tease both sides of the topic here is like, what would be some advantages to the way things are now with live service? And then what would you say would be some, disadvantages or some, downsides of the live service format?
yeah, so as far as advantages go, right? I can be an optimist there. I can say there could be a game developer that releases a game and tells people what they're going to be, working on, what they're going to be implementing, what their roadmap is, and actually follow through with it.
Yeah.
Right? It can be done correctly. And I just don't know if there's a game that has gotten close to that mark.
I agree. I think it kind of creates a situation where like you use the word roadmap and like I almost hate the roadmaps because it's always like a trap in my mind for like over promise and under deliver. And it's like there's more time and effort being spent into the creation of a roadmap and the marketing of the next season or next update than there is, in my opinion, of them actually working on making it like a good update or whatever it might be. And I agree with you. I've not found a game, no game's perfect, but I've not found a game that's kind of hit that consistently throughout its whole life cycle. And, there's ups and downs. And part of the problem, I think, with live service is that, you have games going on for so many years and it's like inevitably management changes, right? Developers shift in and out, development teams might change. So you have lots of different perspectives and ideas that like by the middle to end of a game's life cycle, it could be an entirely different developer and team than where it started. And you could get an entirely different product because ideas and concepts just changed. But do you think it's a lot of, overpromise, underdeliver?
Oh, for sure. I think that, there's a couple weird dynamics at play, right? When I think of a live service game, I think immediately of PUBG and how popular PUBG was up front, right? A lot of people picked it up. A lot of people were playing it. And even though we kind of knew it wasn't finished, we had the hope that it would be.
Oh,
right?
We knew it wasn't finished when you like drove through the ground.
Oh, yeah.
You ended up under the map every game.
But, eventually players, update after update saw that nothing was really changing. And I think that's why a lot of people moved away from it, which makes sense,
Sure.
right? That's why I moved away from it.
I agree. Me as well.
But if you're the company that makes PUBG, I have no idea who you are, sorry. You've already made off with the money for all of those people picking it up the first time.
Yeah.
So do you really have an incentive to keep on developing for your, greatly reduced player base? I don't think so.
Agreed. And I think it kind of, like, to your point there, like the incentive, I think it kind of ties back into what I was saying about monetization. It's like they go hand in hand. So our incentive to prolong the life of this game is to keep selling people microtransactions, right? And it's like, as long as the sales are good, they're not necessary. I mean, yes, they're looking at metrics in terms of player count, but I would assume, and I don't know this for a fact, but I would assume that dollar signs matter more than the number of players. So, I mean, I think that's interesting. What would you say, like, let's kind of flip the argument here, and you can even use your PUBG reference. What would be the positives of a game as a live service?
Positives of a game as a live service. Yeah, this should be easy.
I actually have a couple of things written in the topic section that I was just thinking off the top of my head.
Yeah, go for it. Because I think everything that I would say would be idealism, because I don't think any of this is real.
So I mean, yeah, I mean, maybe I'm stretching things a little bit, but I'm going to use a game as an example that has it's benefit from a live service. It's not the game. It's not even doesn't resemble the game it came out being, and that is the Master Chief Collection, the Halo Master Chief Collection. When that thing released, 2014, I think, it was unplayable. You could play the campaign, but the multiplayer was basically unplayable. I remember picking that game up at midnight, so excited. Like, Halo's 1 through 4 all in one game. I mean, what? Pinch me, or maybe not 1 through 4. It was 1 through 3 at least, and they added 4 eventually. And like, it's a dream. That's a dream. That's a dream package. Like, for me. And then just getting home and then not being able to find. I was on for like 5 hours. I played 2 games because I couldn't find games. And then the games I was in were laggy. It just it was awful. Now, fast forward to today, that game, it's everything. It's like a Halo fanboy's dream. It has every game on there besides obviously Halo 5 and Infinite. The multiplayer options are amazing. It has full modding tools, so the community is able to create new experiences that have never been seen before. The things I see on, I mean, that this game makes me want to get a PC all by itself because of the things I'm seeing. Like, they're crazy. Like, I'll have to send you guys some videos later, but they're just absolutely crazy. Like, someone made Mario Kart in Halo MCC. It looks amazing. But yeah, and just the options you have now, like, that game is just so much fun. It's honestly it's the game that they wanted to release back in 2013 or 2014, whenever it came out.
Sure, but
it took 10 years to get there, but they're there.
There you go. So I would almost argue, though, right, that, like, again, you're saying it's a positive that they can, release a hot mess and just fix it and fix it and fix it. But I would almost say it enables developers and publishers to put out. It's almost incentivizing you to just put out a game that's like half baked, because it's like, the players will just take whatever you can drop in their lap. And then guess what? Like, they're the play testers, essentially. We don't even hire QA anymore. We just let the players do it. They give us all the feedback, and they whine on Twitter and on Twitch and whatever and Reddit. And then, we just kind of fix things as we can. And, a 10-year development cycle is now really just like kind of 5 years and then live service. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It seems like a little bit of a cop-out, in my opinion.
No, I agree. And I hate, I hate the fact that games release half-baked now, and they use the live service tag as an excuse to just add features that should have been there at launch. Obviously,
Sure.
Halo Infinite suffered from this a lot. I'm not really going to go into it because it makes me angry. But like Halo MCC, like, when that released, it didn't lack content or anything. It just was broken. And so obviously, the developers thought they were releasing like the perfect Halo experience. Obviously, they didn't have every feature in there that they have now, but they had all the multiplayers, all the campaigns, like that. Like that's what they wanted to release, and I mean, for your money, like that's a great deal having all those options.
Sure. But
So I
like the
don't know.
back end is part of development though, right? Like so the server's working and like like the functionality of the game aside from just the content suite, I think that I mean that's probably one of the biggest parts of development, I would think. And so again, it's like they're almost skipping out on, that, right? Like the actual foundation of the game and they're just getting to the like the visuals, the looks. Or look at all the stuff we gave you, but you might have to wait 2 years for it to actually work.
Yeah, that's true. Um, I mean, I guess another, I mean, and just moving off that, but another, I mean, honestly, probably the best thing to come out of live service is the ability for developers to change things in the game, whether it's nerfing guns, nerfing characters, buffing guns, buffing characters. It's just a great way to keep a game fresh. Um, and I actually think the timing of things is good. Like seasonality, like basically a season in a live service game is about 3 to 4 months, probably on the lower end of that, probably closer to 3 months. And I think that's a really healthy time frame to change things, 3 months at a time. Um, and I mean, it's every live service game that does this now. But I mean, for example, I mean, Apex is the one that I mean, I've played that game the most, but guns
Can
that were considered useless. What'd you say?
can you define what live service means? Because I don't think I'm clear on this.
Uh, Basically, for me, what I would interpret it as is just a game that, like I think Chris touched on it earlier, a game that is released with like a 5 to 10 year roadmap, and the developer's plan is to add content to it, take player feedback in, change things that the community thinks needs to be changed. Um, and it's basically they basically just are nourishing the game for years ahead of time, like years down the road. They're not just making the game and cleaning their hands of it. They're releasing
Mm.
it and then it's their baby. They'll nurture it and change it as need be. Um,
Okay. I think
yeah,
what
so
tripped me up there was the nerfing, buffing, and rebalancing. If you take a game like CS:GO, right, there's a couple updates. I don't know how often they are, but it'll be things like changing the fire rate on some of the guns, or changing the magazine capacity on some of the guns, or stuff like that. And I feel like that CS:GO doesn't fall into the live service category, I don't think.
Well, I would agree and disagree. I don't think CS:GO is like necessarily marketed as a live service game, so to speak, in the sense that they're promising to like evolve it. Like what they put out is essentially like what's going to be there. Obviously, they're going to maybe add weapons, add cosmetics, add maps, whatever. But I do think like balancing is look at look at really like games even 10 years ago, like balancing with patches, like balancing weapons, balancing, whatever level design, whatever it might be, nerfs, buffs, right? Those are like fairly recent terms. You know what I mean? I mean, we even go back to like, let's say Gears of War, right? Or Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare, like one of my favorite games of all time. Like, as far as I know, like the only updates were like, to put out a DLC, maybe if there was something like totally game breaking, they might do that. But yeah, I mean, like, if a gun was OP, like for as long as I know, it remained OP. And it kind of goes hand in hand with like esports though. It's like, we want to create a more balanced and competitive environment. So obviously we need to change things. I think the other big change, and I don't know this for sure, but I think, developers' ability to push through updates, I think that process has changed. I want to say years ago, it was a really lengthy process. Like an update that you got was probably like a few months old by that point because it has to go through so many checks and balances before it actually gets pushed live. I think that's a more streamlined process in today's environment. But I think this sort of segues into, one of the points I'd like to kind of see what you guys think about is, you know, we talked about games as a live service. We've talked about, movement. We talked about monetization. I think it all sort of comes together to, do we think that competition, esports, do we think like that is something that's starting to play a role in some of these other concerns that we're talking about, or what do we think here?
I can't off the top of my head draw direct lines. When I think about esports, I think of CS:GO and the big major tournaments that they have.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, teams have sponsors, but for the most part, oh no, I'm wrong. I was going to say for the most part, there's not a ton of monetization done there for a big tournament.
Yeah.
But I realized that I'm wrong because for every tournament, whichever teams are in, the 16 teams that are in this major, they have stickers that are sold in game. There's also sticker capsules, which are like the containers where you need something to unlock it, and you got to pay for that to unlock it.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're going to get. So, yes, this absolutely has an impact on, the monetization stuff because
Absolutely.
people want to buy stickers.
Yeah.
Right? I've got old stickers from, I think, 2016 of teams that don't exist anymore that are worth, tens of dollars when these things really should be 99 cents.
100%. I mean, you can even, I think there's a huge parallel between esports and gaming and professional sports, right? I mean, they're selling you, the average player, on fandom, right? They're, these patches and these balancing updates, right? You want to be up to date on things because you want to know the meta, right? You want to be as competitive. You want to play like these pros do, right? The live service, another thing, right? We can balance the way we want our tournaments and professional leagues to play. I think if you look at Call of Duty, the CDL, the Call of Duty League, right? The professional arena shooter, you know what I mean? We're talking core game modes, control, search and destroy, stuff like that. That balancing is 100% affecting the way Warzone is developed because they don't want to break CDL, what the CDL players, the pros, can do. And in terms of changing big things in Warzone, because the systems are all tied together. How you develop Warzone affects mechanics within, the CDL. So it's, again, I think it's all kind of tied in. And that's sort of where I was just I kind of wanted to see what you guys thought. Ryan, do you kind of agree that sort of all these changes we've talked about, they all kind of match up with, how big esports has become for a lot of these games that we're referring to?
Yeah, no, I mean monetization, Derek hit the nail on the head. I mean, I keep referencing Halo, but play a lot of Halo, but Halo does they have a part of the store where you can purchase the same skins that the esports teams are using
Yep.
in the tournaments, which I think is cool actually. I think that's great.
Sure.
It's like buying a jersey of your favorite player for your favorite team. And there's no randomization to that. You get a Spartan coding and you get a weapon skin, which is cool. And I don't think price wise they're somewhat reasonable. I don't know the price, but I don't remember them being too egregious. And then in regards to what I was talking about earlier with movement, I it's weird because I feel like you don't need to have great a shooter or a game with great movement to be considered competitive, obviously, because esports has been around for a long time, and games with lesser movement were very popular back in the day. But I do think that I think games these days especially are made with with a competitive mindset.
Bingo.
The developers are we want this game to become an esport, or we need this game to be sweaty and competitive. Whereas back in the day, the developers would make a fun shooter first, a fun casual shooter first, and then implement different settings and whatnot to make it more competitive. For example, Halo 5 was it as fun as that game is, and actually the mechanics are great in that game. that game was not made with a casual player base in mind. That was made for the sweatiest of sweats, wanting something with great movement, um, and precise aiming. Whereas the older games, were more of like party shooters, but then they would introduce MLG settings with like battle rifle starts and a motion
Hmm.
sensor,
Hmm.
um, settings like that. So I do think that the esports scene and the popularity of esports has really changed the way developers, the foundation of how games are made.
Yeah,
At the drawing board, they're like, okay, we need to cater to a competitive audience because that's what people want these days. And I don't think that's the
and
case. I really don't
what I
think that's
was
necessarily
just
true.
what I was just kind of curious is like, and I don't think there's an answer, but it's like I was just kind of looking at all these things we were talking about. And I'm like wondering, like, does esports drive all that, or is esports sort of a product of a lot of these other changes to a lot of systems? You know what I mean? Like you look at like longevity, like live service, right? You know, look at a game like Rainbow Six Siege, right? It started out as a very like basic. It was supposed to be like a tactical cops and robbers game, and it's now like a competitive like hero shooter, right? And it's been around for like 7 or 8 years, and it's still thriving. And it's like you look at that, and it's like it takes all the principles we discussed, right? It's monetized pretty like fairly heavily. It's absolutely a live service game. Um, Not so much on movement, but they focused. This is like a little bit pre-movement era, but they focused on a very like positioning centric kind of game, right? So
Hmm.
there's a high skill gap there, but it's like all those things we talked about kind of fit into that, and I think like it's almost like every publisher is trying to stamp out their esport game, right? Whatever it may be. It might just be an arena shooter, it might be a battle royale, but regardless, that's kind of like the way of gaming. It kind of leads me to another question I had for you guys. Do you think that maybe players have changed? Like, does everybody want to be the next big content creator? Like, is gaming becoming content creation? You know what I mean? Like, you look at Twitch, obviously, like crazy saturated with streamers. Um, Derek, what do you kind of think about that? Like the idea of content creation being more accessible, are games being made for that, or are people just really harnessing, the potential there? What do you think?
Oh boy, content creation's a big topic that I think we might even say for another episode.
I think we could, but
Yeah.
just to kind of be brief and answer the question in
Yeah.
terms of like, do you think there's a big focus from developers, or or has it have players changed, with a different perspective on trying to be streamers or YouTubers, whatever?
Yeah, I think that technology has made it incredibly easy for people to live stream them playing games. I think that whatever, free press that the game gets
Mm-hmm.
from any streamers streaming their game and, sharing that experience with the community is, hopefully good for that game. So I think that games that are geared towards that, single player games that are maybe have a story to tell, that's great for that. Games like CS:GO that are competitive can be very good in viewership numbers for, competitive players. So I think it's just players have changed, but it's because technology's also changed and made it easier.
That's a good point. And Ryan, I'm gonna kind of pass it over to you in a second, but I think this right here is like another opportunity to sort of identify like a potential episode. Just kind of discussing content creation, because I think there's a lot of avenues we can go down within that topic in and of itself. But Ryan, go ahead. I want to kind of hear your thoughts. What do you think? Is it content creation has been so popular and so available that players are harnessing that, or do you think games are catering towards it?
No, well, I think players, especially like younger players and like I mean like teenagers and people in their early 20s, like in college or just out of college. I think streaming is so popular now, And I mean, who wouldn't want to get paid to play their favorite game in front of people? So I think in that regard, the players' mindsets changed where um, everyone wants to be. I mean, everyone wants to be the next, or not everyone, but a lot of people would want to be the next big streamer. They want to be able to play. I mean, they want to play games for a living. I mean, who wouldn't want
Sure.
like as a gamer, who wouldn't want that? And then you see all these successful streamers. They're got thousands of people watching them. They're doing well financially. Like younger kids, young adults see that and they're like, I want to do that. How do I do that? And if you're not, I mean, you either have to be really good at the game or you have to be incredibly funny or charismatic. And if you're not funny or charismatic,
Or
then
handsome.
But what if you're both?
or handsome.
or handsome,
Or damn handsome.
although have
All
you
of the
seen? I mean,
above.
have you
Check.
seen some of the streamers out there?
So,
Um,
I hear you on that. I think this is a good spot to kind of bookmark that. I think we can open that up in a possible future episode. But I think this is kind of a good place to stop for episode 2.
Yeah.
Derek, do you
Yeah, I agree with
kind
you.
of feel that? Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, thanks again for listening to episode 2. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter. We are at 5 o'clock sweats there. You can search us up on YouTube and Spotify. Also search up 5 o'clock sweats. And anything else I'm forgetting?
Well, if you're watching this on YouTube, please make sure jump in the discussion, comment below, and we love to kind of hear what other people's thoughts are. I'm sure we're not the only ones to kind of have these discussions. A lot of these discussions are things we're having, outside of the podcast, so we're just kind of putting it on the platform there. But yeah, feel free to comment below. Thanks for watching as always.
Stay sweaty, y'all.
Ooh,
sweaty.
another candidate for a sign off. Nice.
Ooh, I kind of like that one, honestly. I don't.
We're just going to have like a billion different sign offs. It's never going to be the same. I'm all right
Wipe
with
that brow.
We might have to put up to a vote eventually, like a Twitter poll or something.